all here today on our panel discussion on future digital infrastructure for Viksit Bharat. So since we are starting on our first discussion here, we have a special keynote speaker, Mr. MP Sunil Kumar. I would like to invite him on stage with a huge round of applause. On behalf of everyone, I extend my heartfelt welcome to you, sir, as our keynote speaker. Mr. MP Sunil Kumar is a CEO Constel on Space World. With a stellar track record in telecom industry, Mr. Sunil brings a wealth of experience in achieving market success in both enterprise and consumer business.
So, future digital infrastructure, that's the topic. But before we get there, today was yesterday's future, right? So, we are in the future of someday that we have built ourselves to be. So, um, and when I speak about this subject, I don't want to talk too much technology because I don't know whether I'm very good at it. What I thought I'll use maybe the next 5-7 minutes is to give you a perspective of what is possible for us as individuals, as organizations. So my sister stays in US, and when I got my dad to send her a voice note on WhatsApp, he was elated, right? And of course, he was used to video calls and all, but then rather than typing long messages in English, to be able to send out a voice note in the native tongue, I think that was a huge digital journey for him. So, and then my son tells me something about what is that digital detox retreats, something that has gained more and more popularity, unfortunately, today. So that we are caught, at least I am caught between two generations who thinks a simple thing like a voice note is a great leap. And then on the other hand, you have a generation who wants to detach from digital, right? And that's the generation divide. We talk about so many divides that we need to bridge, and generation divide is one such, not the only divide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that divide. Not only that, I mean, just to keep things in perspective. The other things that we will also explore, and more so in the panel, and Mohit is going to moderate that session, which is going to be quite interesting. So this keynote is really to lead into that panel discussion. But over there, the ecosystem that we are all a part of creating, maintaining, and also, let's say, thought leadership in envisaging the future on how that ecosystem needs to develop and fulfill some of the promises it's making to the nation, the community, the society, and the individuals as a whole, not to forget the organizations that we represent and work for. So in that, I think building that ecosystem and the people, including all of us who are responsible for that upkeep, is something that I would like to start with. But before all, a customer, we have customers, and customers can be very different. This is a consumer, but customers in equal measure can be enterprises as well. And we all say customer first. It is there on most of our offices, let's say the billboards and walls. How do we actually get it down from the walls to our desk is actually the journey that we need to make, right? And what do the customers want? With 5G or maybe 64 years down the line, we are looking at higher and higher throughputs, and there's a whole lot of industry working towards increasing the throughput. Low latency for all the future fit inventions and initiatives that are coming in, driverless cars, gaming, and medical, and all of that. Surety of service, which is like, if I am selling something to a customer, how do we make sure that the service is always available to the customer? And the necessary attention, which is like if the customer gets into an issue or he wants support, do we really attend to that? Is there a support system that can really take care of them? And that's not just a services point of view, it is also about attention to the need for individual class. It's like, no, am I treated as a bespoke enterprise and not be served with a run-of-the-mill, off-the-rack solution? And hence, inclusivity. So we can talk about inclusivity as us as Uber, city-based individuals or enterprises. But inclusivity is also about how do we include the rest of the nation, the globe at large, in this journey. And a quick glance through the ecosystem. I'm not going to put up anything new here. This all we are, and we are all in some way or the other connected to some of this stuff, right? Most of us are there. For me personally, like, it's almost like for us in India, we would relate to the proverbial squirrel in Ramayana, right? Like everyone contributing their own bit in building the bridge. I think we're there in the core connectivity mid-mile as an industry, but and all of us work towards those small bits in building the entire ecosystem. And the transformation, when we talk about the digital transformation, really it is about key things. I've made some note of it, but I'll stay on this for a little bit. I think for the younger ones who have been blessed with working with the cloud, we'll know that there are very, very, very digital native initiatives and technologies that are very, very unique to cloud. Some of them are Kubernetes. Like you have containerized applications coming in, self-sustaining applications. You have serverless computing, and then you have things like microservices, etc., which are very, very unique to the digital technologies. Or from artificial intelligence, the potential artificial intelligence and machine learning. Hitherto, like big data, there was so much of data that the telcos or any service provider had on the customer, but pretty much that was all wasted. Now we have the ability to kind of bring it all together in making sense and serving the customers better. Somewhere in that list, when we talk about digital infrastructure, we always think about technology, and that's what we are all a part of. I think an extension of digital infrastructure is also digital public infrastructure, something that I'm not very sure how many of us pay attention to, other than the policymakers, right? So how do you really be conscious of our responsibility towards the public at large, nation or communities at large? And unless we bridge that gap, digital divide will increase, and that we are already seeing that. So you have the digital haves and have-nots, and there is a moral responsibility on all of us really to help bridge that. Like we should make money, otherwise it's not sustainable. We can't blow up a lot of money as organizations in building a dream just like that without a valid business case. But many a times initiatives on the digital public inclusion is going to be extremely important, and that's where policy making, and in the panel I think we'll explore some bit of it on the policy making plays a very important part. And hence I'll stay on this a little bit on what are the growth enablers, right? I've put some of the things, and these are not the only ones. There will be very situational initiatives depending on your geography or your business environment. In that, political leadership perhaps is the most important one as far as digital initiatives, and especially the DPI is concerned, right? And it could be based on the economic growth. If you look at Digital India initiatives that the government launched a decade or so ago, I think it is appreciating the fact that there were some nations who were already seeing the benefit of such initiatives, and some of us have worked in those industries or in those societies. Addressing the digital divide, I covered that a little bit. I think a clear digital strategy is something that has been laid forward, and it's going to evolve on an ongoing basis. But in that digital infrastructure, we spoke about some of the components of the digital infrastructure earlier. How do you govern that digital infrastructure? How do you really make sure that, look at this, right? A large organization who's able to integrate all those parts, and we have a few examples globally, would look at the economic benefits derived for them out of that, and then you have a policy which says that CSR you set aside a certain percentage of your profits towards community, and then your obligation to the society and the nation or the globe is fulfilled. That's not what bridging the digital divide is. How do you foster innovation in such an environment? How do you make sure that the small, young organizations have an equal opportunity at the table? And how do you integrate that into whatever we are doing? And there, the policymakers needs to come in. They have to play a more active role in that. The other aspect is one is rolling out a strategy and say that we will build a digital India, and these are great efforts. It requires a huge amount of effort to change the direction, and a lot of work has been done on that. But just to give you a statistic, the government today spends 2% of their overall funds towards telecom, setting up the telecom infrastructure. So pretty much telecom industry is all self-funded. Yeah, and that is compared to a much bigger number in any of the developed markets where the government spends huge amount of money in inclusivity, like in the rural connect, making sure that the overall nation progresses. So I think that is a clear area that we as industry leaders should influence the powers that be in thinking of. And hence, I think there is need and room for government to spend more on creating this digital infrastructure, because it requires, when we say 80% of our population is digitally disconnected, it requires a huge amount of effort to really do that. And it's not going to happen in 3 years, 5 years. It is a sustained effort that is going to require focused attention, and more than attention, belief that this is the way to go, right? And in doing all of that, we have our own, in our own organizations, in our own lives as individuals or as teams, we have our own place under the sun. And that sweet spot where you can make money and do social good is what we should aspire for. It is not going to stand good in the boardrooms when you're reviewing, saying that, no, I was helping that person in rural Bihar trying to connect negative. No, that's not going to be an excuse. Your CEO is not going to excuse you for that. But while doing everything that we do on a day-to-day life, I think having that at the back of the mind and making sure that we roll out things, initiatives, pick up small stuff, and that small stuffs put together can really lead to something that becomes a reckoning force. And hence, if we have to choose really a North Star, I mean, this is my individual personal thing. I'm not speaking for the organization or anything, but then I'm sure most of us in our ideal states of mind would resonate that, how do we build strategic business plans and value hence, including the society and including the disconnected. I think that's what is extremely important, and I just wanted to land that point of view on this. We will have the panel discussion, which will be a little bit more pointed and maybe a little bit more topical to the subject. But I thought, let me use this opportunity to really maybe speak of something that is that is a moral responsibility for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving such an impactful guidance on this matter. Now like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Mohit Bhasin. He is a partner, GNP Economic Growth, a co-lead for economic growth practice at KPMG International. I would like to welcome Mr. Mohit sir here on stage. A huge round of applause, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Sunil, for painting the absolute technical architecture and the base for our session. I'm going to lightly dilute it with the economic angle for this, but with this, I take the opportunity of inviting on the panel Mr. Varun Das. Mr. Varun is the Executive Vice President and Chief Product Officer of Bharti Airtel. Varun. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Umang Jindal. Mr. Umang is the Head of Network, Software and Performance for India and Southeast Asia for Ericsson. Umang. Please join me in welcoming Madam Gianna Terengi. Madam Gianna is the Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for Huber Soana. Ma'am, please. Please join me in welcoming Vivek Shrivastava. Vivek is the Country Manager for India and SAARC for Fortinet. Vivek. And of course, I'm requesting my team to look for Lieutenant General Dr. S.P. Kocher. Sir, please join us. I was hoping you were sitting here. Sir, please join us. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the panel, and thank you everyone here. So let me just slightly lighten up the technicalities for the people who are not pure techies from the telecom. I lead the economic growth practice of KPMG. And when I say economic growth, we work across the economies. And when I say economic growth, it covers 3 different levers. You can create economic growth either by your people, which is the citizens, the workforce, and so on and so forth, or you can create economic growth by resources, whether it's in agriculture or natural resources. And the third and the most important pillar in today's world is digital-led economic growth. I think this is where India has done marvelous job in uplifting our economic growth from what it was, I would say 10, 15 years back to today we are. Now, what does this mean for us? I'm sure some of you used to sign checks for making your credit card payments and used to go to the deposit box by driving by yourself or sending someone to make your credit card payment, to make your telecom payment, electricity bill payment, right? It's a time cost. For you to sign the check, go all the way, deposit, wait for 2 days. Now, when it is done today in less than 5 seconds, the time cost of everyone like us is eventually becoming us more productive and adding to the economic growth. Why this has happened? Because of the massive telecom revolution which India is currently witnessing, and it is the beginning, I would say. We are still talking about 5G to 6G 4 years from now. You just mentioned that, right? We are talking about the massive revolution around the digital infrastructure led by the hard infrastructure we have been able to put in. And what's the icing on the cake, or the most beautiful part of India being shining this entire wave, is the policy framework. That means as fintech companies, as digital companies, one can experiment. One can be very, very bold. And I don't think so anybody today haven't utilized the so-called the power of UPI, the upcoming ONDCs, right? This is all because of the digital revolution, the telecom revolution. Had it not happened, possibly this would still have been going to the bank to deposit our checks. So this is economic growth for us. And today topic is not just about unfolding the future of digital infrastructure, but Viksit Bharat. Now, what we are looking at in terms of numbers, today we are talking about a $3.5 trillion economy. By 2047, there are different numbers, but what I have heard from Niti Aayog CEO is we are aspiring to touch $30 trillion economy, so roughly a 10-fold increase. Now, this is doable for a country like India. Always we have surprised people on numbers, including economic numbers. So how do we make it happen, right? With this, I will have my esteemed panelists sharing some perspective. So let me start with Umang. Umang, looking at the partnership between telecom, between fintech players, between digital service providers, right? They all have to work in tandem in a seamless fashion. How do you see all of them coming together and now helping us to achieve that delta of 10x what we are aspiring, if not 10x, 5x? What's your thoughts?
Okay, I think this is a good point to start with. We're talking about bringing the ecosystem together, and not only from a CSP point of view, but from CSPs along with fintech companies as well as the different part of the digital info world. So I would love to talk about 3-prong effects, right? Number one, we need to make sure that all these 3 things that we're talking about, they connect to the masses. 4G brought a revolution, a lot of people got connected, but if I look at India, around 30% of India is still not connected with good amount of bandwidth. And I think that's one area where we need to work on. And it's more about, companies which are talking about basic infrastructure. Could be fiber companies, could be companies related to towers, satellites. That is one area where this whole connectivity has to happen. And this continues to grow into the urban area where connectivities have achieved. And when I look at the urban areas, the need of an hour is different. Now we're talking about new technology innovations. We are done with voice, data, a lot of content is there. And the advancement in that part of the world or that part of the country is we need to make the content more richer, multilingual content. And it is not only about the content, it is more about how do you ensure that more services are generated. And that's where we are talking about service exposure of services. And there's a new stream of companies which will come into it, because all the content that we are creating, that has to be available for more applications. Service exposure is one thing, business exposure is another thing, and the key part over there is that how AI comes into it and you try to create more and more stuff. The third piece where this thing is going to happen is, if I look at UPI, we started UPI practically around 8 to 9 years back when 4G started in. And I think today India is doing more than 10 billion transactions a month from an UPI point of view. Will that remain same? No, it is going to go multifolds. With that, we need to start looking into different partnership models. And that could be another piece of the puzzle where we are looking towards, I would say the Indian regulatory bodies, there are a lot of them. For example, TRI is working on bringing the partnerships from people to industries. So we need to get the industries connected to it. And that would be a different niche of digital infrastructure providers. We can't even imagine what sort of companies would come into it. But if I look into it, there are more and more companies where we need to get the new consumer. And I see enterprise as one big consumer along with regulatory bodies in terms of different partnership models. So these are the three things that we see are important.
Thank you so much. I think what I definitely picked up is the imagine the unimaginable is the future for us. Then when things are coming together, and can you just talk us through about something around the digital inclusion, how this is going to unfold, and what's currently in the anvil?
Okay, so maybe a link from the first point. So when I talk about digital inclusion, what we see is, we started 5G 2.5 years back in India, and the data consumption is increasing. And just not only the data consumption, people are connected. Around 35 to 40% of the 1.2 billion subscriptions that we have in India are connected on data. But what is changing? We were talking when we were sitting before is connecting the houses. Today we are on the peak where there's a huge demand of homes and enterprise connectivity, which has started on 5G. So practically India has around 40 millions of different enterprises and home connected today. We are looking at a base of more than 60 to 80 million, which has to be connected again. And last couple of months we have connected around 2 to 2.5 million or 3 million of houses. Not only that, when we look at what Sunil Mittal said in the session, he said that in next 2 years we will have approximately full India covered on 5G. Akash Ambani brought a point of data centers. So look at this. So the technology, what we are looking at is that this huge amount of data. I also talked about content and multilingual content which is being created. So all these contents are going to come in. 5G is going to come in. AI is going to come in. Blockchain is going to come in. So with all these things coming in, there is more and more demand of security as well. So what I see from a technology point of view is 5G will revolutionize everything. We are expecting more and more of data consumption happening, and that's where I see the whole digital space is changing out.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Umang. Varun, if I may just draw your thoughts towards some of the critical challenges what Umang has just highlighted. How do you see? I mean, Airtel is a very homegrown brand, and we love the kind of the coverage you provide, the access you provide. How do you see as a service provider unfolding this issue of challenges what we are forcing in achieving that 2047 vision?
Thanks for that question, Mohit. It's good to be here, and thanks for this opportunity. It's a really meaningful discussion when you think about digital inclusion, financial inclusion, because I think like we heard in the keynote, it's about how do you connect people. And Airtel's been in the business of connecting people now for almost 3 decades, right? I think our entire focus is how do we get there. Today, if you look at India, it's a diverse geography. It's a country with 1.4 billion people. In 2015, the government launched the Digital India initiative. And I'll talk on one part, which is the partnership with the public-private partnerships, right? I think BharatNet is a great example of the ambition to connect 630,000 inhabited villages in India to the internet, right? Since 2015, we have 850 million customers connected to the internet. It is due to the advent of smartphones. And so I think foundationally, some of these pieces are there. When you think about the future of digital inclusion, we have to think about how do you get access to the remote areas. So today, about 95% of our population is connected, but they live in 75% of the areas. And so when you think about delivering connectivity to remote areas, there's a few parameters we're thinking about. One, of course, is, like I said, diverse geography means you have extremes when it comes to hills or forested areas, right? And so to be able to, in a responsible way, connect them, it's something that has to be considered. The second part of it is power. Power is a very critical part of digital inclusion. If you have power to sustain the infrastructure, you will be able to connect people in a more sustainable manner. This is something which we're also doing. The third thing also is about density of population. It's a lot easier to connect highly dense population areas because it makes economic sense. So think about a village that is about 150 people. And when you think about connecting 150 people, one, of course, that you want to include them. And so you need to be able to do it in a way that is economically viable, whoever is doing it, right? And I talked about the public-private partnership because some of these can be achieved where you can piggyback off government programs. I think we talked about a larger investment from the government in helping do this. The second part of it is financial inclusion. I think a 2023 RBI report said 30% of our rural population is unaware of the financial tools that are available to them, right? And I think before we talk about financial inclusion, you have to have some level of connectivity because, like you said, the revolution in India in fintech is remarkable, right? So how do you get, and India is a very entrepreneurial nation, right? And we've kind of powered our growth that way. And you talked about startups that have really revolutionized fintechs. And then you have entrepreneurs in every aspect of what we do. And so think about what fuels entrepreneurship. It's access to credit. And one of the things that telcos can do and play a role, and we've actively been doing it, is how do you help people get new to credit customers get access to credit, right? So think about it this way. We have about 400 million customers. So we have a billing relationship with more than a third of this country. We understand the patterns of payments, etc. And this allows us to help make credit accessible to these new to credit customers. And so financial inclusion is a function of the ability to be connected and then have access to credit, which is generally harder. And that's kind of one of the things I think. So we have to think forward in what are the layers in which we go do this. I don't think there's one magic bullet to do it, but it's a very thought through way to think about the future of how we achieve this.
Thank you, Varun. I think you very beautifully articulated the challenges we have in serving a country like India. Just a follow-up question. We have been hearing a lot about satellite communication. Yeah. Do you see that could be a potential solution to these difficult challenges for us?
Sure. I think in this journey to Viksit Bharat, there aren't any bad ideas per se. And satellite communication has emerged over the last few years, and it's been work that has happened over many decades, right? I think we finally at a stage where we can start thinking about deploying it to population. So definitely when it comes to, and we already use it, if you look at maritime industry, if you look at the defense industry, we are doing this. It was limited to a very few players, and I think our ability to reach remote parts of the country will definitely be helped by satellite technology. I think it has to be a partnership between terrestrial networks and satellite networks. And it's also because you can leverage satellite comms to be the backhaul for your towers, or you can leverage it for emergency response, you can leverage it for messaging as opposed to calling. And I think what is important in this journey to Viksit Bharat is to understand what the country needs, what the people need, and that's how you deploy technology, right? Like, it isn't a one size fits all. What you do in, say, the highest parts of Uttarakhand may be very different from what you do in Andaman, right? And I think that's the way one should think about it, in my opinion.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Varun. Let me invite Jenna. Jenna, uh, if I look at the fiber and the tower infrastructure, how do you see this, as a challenge and an opportunity from convergence perspective? What's your view?
Yeah, I think that as it was mentioned also in the keynote earlier this morning, the business case is really a big issue when you want to reach remote areas. And in this regard, the distance as well as the lack of proper infrastructure from a power point of view, as well as from difficulties with the terrain, all these kind of challenges has to be overcome. But once all this has overcome, and I think in this regard, very important will be a cooperation or a partnership between public and private. When all this is done, what is important is that the network that is going to be deployed has to be a really very robust, not enough to be resilient. It has to be really very reliable, because on this network, this physical network, is going then to be used to all the services that were also mentioning, from the healthcare, from education, and financial services. And in this regard, this quality of the products, of the components of the fiber that is used to reach this, that can go from very simple things like to having monkey protection on your cables, because once they are laid out, you cannot have a breakdown because a monkey is chewing it, to really higher technology in components that can be used in it is a very important factor.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very interesting perspective. Can you just throw some light on the technological innovation which we can think of and can unfold from now onwards?
Yeah, I think that to reach these remote areas there are different kind of technology that can be used. I mean, we see worldwide, mainly, of course, they are based on wireless and wireline. And the wireless part, as was mentioned before, it's also fixed wireless access is a very important one. As Varun was also mentioning, the non-terrestrial network will be a very important one. Also for 6G is one of the main technology that is coming in question. And using it not just with dedicated spectrum, but really being able to use it also with sub-6 gigahertz frequency. So really using directly on mobile phones. But from a wireline point of view, we see now with the Bharat, for instance, now we are in the phase 3, how much has been done already to reach the remote villages and how much is going to be done. And also here, different technology can be used. Of course, the fiber is going to be deployed, but together with this fiber network, it's necessary to have also some monitoring of the network, of the quality of the network. And in this, also optical multiplexer or wavelength divisional multiplexer are really important to be used in this phase of monitoring, in bypass filter, as well as, of course, all the transceiver that will allow us also to be future-proof with the high data rate that is coming.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Jenna. Dr. Kochar, we are talking about future, 2047, $30 trillion economy. What's your perspective? How this policy will further evolve? How do we, whatever we have done is fairly successful. The bar is high. It has to be much higher now. How does the policy will enable that, sir?
When you say policy, I understand it will be policy and regulation as a combination.
Yes, regulation has to be reduced. Policy should enable. Both the levels.
You see, as technology advances, technology certainly advances at a much faster pace than policy. You can't lay down a policy before technology comes in. So that is what we are witnessing now, that with 5G coming in, uh, the policies have started changing, the regulations have started changing. But technology is continuing to march. And more importantly, the boundaries of the networks are vanishing. We cannot define a network to be territorial. It has now become worldwide. The users have become worldwide. The components which attach to a network are again worldwide. It can be from anywhere to anywhere. So policy will primarily have to grapple with one fact, that is uh, the legal aspect of the policy which has been laid down may not be applicable to all users and the entire network. Now that is a very difficult situation for all countries of the world. But then the solution can be found in technology itself. If you look at the no trust regime, which people are talking about now, policies which we make for our region can be implemented in our region through legal means, but for outsiders who want to use our network or be part of our network, we are at liberty to use technology to enforce that policy. So that nobody can object to, because that may not have a legal backing in the sense that the violators cannot be challenged in court, but you can definitely stop violators from entering your network. So those are the things which will start emerging in policy and regulation both. Second thing which we will have to grapple with is the man-machine interface. Now, this is something which has come in for the first time with 5G, and it will start including the human being as part of the network in 6G. You are aware of that. So therefore, the growth of elements which latch onto the network become exponentially higher as time flies, which means the partitioning of the network or the edge computing and slicing become very important. And therefore, they have to be built into the policies that emerge. Similarly, the data, because the major ingredient of any network usage is data. And your data cannot come only from local sources or cannot be stored only in local sources, no matter what you do. So therefore, again, we will have to look at how we have to secure this data and see that this data has access only to the authorized people, and on authorization basis, in the sense that minimal access to people for which they have been cleared by policy. This entire implementation of policy today is hybrid. It is paper and technology combined. Going forward, it will be more of technology, because otherwise the latencies and all the benefits that you are getting out of the new technologies will vanish. So you will find blockchain, you will find quantum, these sort of things coming in to enforce policy. Now that is something that we haven't ever seen before. This will start happening. But with this enforcement will come other challenges, because if you see data sovereignty, etc., GPDR, etc., these are alien aspects to technology. They are not supported by technology. So therefore, when you use implements of technology to enforce policy, on one hand, on the other hand, legislation enforces a policy which is alien to technology. How do you manage both of them? So that is something which we will have to face in the next 4 or 5 years. So these are some of my thoughts, initial thoughts, as to how policy is going to shape up in future. And of course, needless to say, this shaping up will have to be very fast. It can't be at the pace at which we've been used to it. It'll have to be very fast, and it'll have to be interactive.
Thank you, sir. I think the way you positioned these into different buckets of complexity, and then how do we really have to see it by pivoting it, is helpful, sir. Just a follow-on question: how do you see the element of public-private partnership? Given this government is quite flexible in terms of absorbing the private sector's contribution while designing the policy framework, and we are talking about a massive upsurge of data with 5G to 6G moving, and data is like, you will not even recognize that, right? And then you're talking about different countries, you're talking about different elements. How does public-private partnership can further evolve in the days to come, sir?
This is an imperative. It is not as if this is something which is a largesse. It is an imperative. You cannot go forward today without public-private partnership. It cannot happen in the complexity of technology rollouts that you ignore the private sector and start laying down policy as you understand. It cannot happen because implementing that policy will become very difficult. So therefore, this partnership between the government and the private is bound to increase. It will become more peer-to-peer, but a new element will get added, and those are the technos. Because understanding technology and seeing what can be brought out of technology is important. Maybe we may find policy being vetted or the drafts being prepared by AI and being brought out for final vetting and approval by the human beings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Please, Vivek, you have heard of 4 of our panelists. I would like you to help us understand that how do we combine the thought process when we are looking at 5G, AI, the new tech such as deep tech, blockchain, and how this will benefit the entire, ecosystem, let's say, ed tech, health tech, is it really going to benefit? How? Help us paint that picture.
See, when we look at the concept of Viksit Bharat 2047, I think these 3 components play a very, very crucial role. Let me start with the AI. 5G, please, and I'll come to AI. Am I audible? Is it
little far? Yes.
Is it okay? Okay. So first piece, 5G. Or going forward, let's say a couple of or 3 years later, we are looking at 6G as well. I look at it as a fast, high-speed, low-latency conduit to every citizen and every small business going forward. Not only for the businesses, larger businesses, but also for the government to digitally, bring these services to the common people and the businesses to, use these digital services for creating their own businesses there. This can be in the areas of, education, can be areas of healthcare. We are already seeing some use cases in telemedicine. We are already seeing some use cases like mobile clinic. We are seeing some use cases in education as well. Financial inclusion, microfinancing is also leveraging the 5G pieces as well. I think this is only going to increase going forward. And it's going to play a very, very crucial role as a conduit to deliver those services. The second piece, if you see AI, while everywhere we are looking at the adoption of AI for all the good, results that we can deliver. Primarily, I see 2 major aspects of it. One, that you'll be able to leverage decision making, leveraging a lot of data analytics that you can bring in, with the AI piece of it. So you can improve these services that you're delivering, whether it's citizen services or whether business services, you can improve those services. You can, customize those services. You can tweak those services, leveraging the data point that comes in, from AI. Blockchain piece, if you see, this brings in the trust factor, across the people who leverage these digital services. You can say blockchain is being leveraged to secure their digital identities. Blockchain being leveraged to secure the data which is generated out of their healthcare records, for that matter, out of their financial transaction records. So blockchain can be leveraged to make sure security is, taken care of, when these aspects come in. So I see these 3 going to play a very, very crucial role going forward to 2047. We are already seeing some use cases being adopted in multiple of these segments like healthcare as well as in education and in financial segments. It's only going to go up per se. That's my view, Mohit.
Interesting, Vivek. Thank you so much. So, the privilege of a moderator is can always ask tough questions. So let me now move to the last round of asking some tough questions. Of course, we are talking about 10x growth. We are talking about inclusion. We are talking about economic growth. It's going to happen. But we also have to see the other side of it. So let me just invite each of you, maybe Vivek will try to start with you. Let's look at sustainability. And to simplify, look at the way the heat is getting generated because of the data transmission. Look at the waste element of electronic waste, and that's the most simplest way of looking at sustainability. Otherwise, sustainability can be ESG and it could be 100 times more complex. And second complex element is the trust. We're going to increase that. So how do you see these 2 elements of trust and sustainability also getting addressed when we are moving from now till 2047, and especially this is the most common fear, trust for anybody, user like you and I, Vivek.
So I'll borrow the sentence that he used. Let's imagine the unimaginable. Let's go back 10 years, when we started on this digital journey, digital India motion. What we imagine at that point in time is that the adoption of the connectivity and the internet will be at this scale probably in 10 years, and we have reached there. But what we did not imagine, that the mess it will create out of it, of these spams and frauds and cyber threats that you see. So what has happened over a period of time, there's a good amount of, I would say, deficit of trust, which is also across users. When we look at 2047, we need to make sure that the systems are addressed in a way that we continue to build that trust as well for the adoption of those services, adoption of those businesses, which are digital in nature. And for that to be done, I think the concept of building an ecosystem has to change to concept of building a secure ecosystem. Primarily, I would say, three very critical aspects of it. Any digital businesses which are being built or digital services which are being built, it has to be done securely. It has to be the core part of the entire digital evolution per se. Cybersecurity has to be taken care of that. Three things that we can leverage there. I think AI, comes as a great help there, both in the detection of the attacks and cyber threats, but also in responding to threats, whether it's 5G based threats, telecom or IoT based threats, or typical IT threats per se. The second thing that I see, and sir also I think talked about that, how do we look at the access of these services? So zero trust, comes up as a good solution there. We look at kind of adopting the zero trust framework so that only secure access is given, only verified access is given to the users, and the data is always secured that way. Third piece I would say is very crucial, which is, amongst the larger community, is the collaboration across the governments, or cybersecurity providers, telecom providers, all of them, to come together to build more, skill sets around cybersecurity, share more intelligence across with each other, so that we can respond to these threats and the, attacks that we see even more cohesively. So that's my view on, how we can probably look at building trust for a longer duration of time, for 2047 vision.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. Kocher sir, can I just invite you for some thoughts? On trust and sustainability, sir.
Okay. You see, again, these are two sides of a coin. You flip one side, the other side suffers. The moment, I'll take for example data centers, which are huge guzzlers of power, or you take blockchain, again, huge guzzler of power. Now, if you want to develop a country, you should have data centers spread all across the country. That is the social aspect. But you have to be practical, and you have to place your data centers in a location where infrastructure is available, where renewable energy is available, where the users are close by, so that the amount of heat which is generated is the least. That cuts across social aspect. So we have to do it in a phased manner, and then maybe work out in a data warehouse, data mart system, so that all data centers get collected to each other, and the sustainability is better. This is one. Second is at the policy level. Use of green open access, use of solar energy, for example, wind energy, should be prioritized and should be incentivized. Unfortunately, in our country, while the rules exist, this is not happening. It is not happening. The green open access is not yet fully acceptable to all, and we continue to work on DGs, which is against the concept of sustainability. The third is, the moment you have technical systems in place, there will be power consumption, and there will be a lot of data flow from one place to another. For example, in the blockchain system that you mentioned. So to take care of that, again, we have to be very selective. as to what type of a blockchain do you require. Do you want a universal blockchain, or do you want a private blockchain or a localized blockchain? So those are the issues, if addressed properly, will let technology march forward and yet bring in sustainability as far as heat generation is concerned, and that will help the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that a lot is done from manufacturing. In the run part, a lot is done from a manufacturing point of view, making equipment that can be managed via software in order to reduce as much as possible the power consumption. But on the other side, also from an infrastructure point of view, we can use bigger cables or bigger diameters that allowed us to bring more power with less loss, because that is really energy that is thrown away. And then, of course, in the use of all the materials that can improve the sustainability of the products.
Thank you so much. Varun, same question for you.
Thanks, Mohit. So I'll talk about trust first. And if you go back to the customer, the Indian citizen is a very aware and demanding customer, right? And I think, and I'll share a couple of examples. One is building trust, given all of us work with a lot of customer data, right? So data privacy is paramount. It's something that we've been passionate about for a long time at Airtel. And I think now the government's also got a Data Privacy Protection Act that's coming into play. So trust is built when you treat customer data with respect and securely. The second example of it is making sure that people feel safe when they transact. So take the example of what we've done with spam. We're the first network in the country to block spam and fraudsters in market. And that instills trust in the citizen of this country, in the customer using the network, to say that when I transact, I'm safe and I can do it. And what this does is it promotes a greater affinity to leverage all the technologies we're talking about, right? The second part on sustainability, and I think they go hand in hand, is you want to do it in a way that is responsible so that we scale. We're a large country, and so for us, scale matters. So you can't have point-to-point solutions. Here's what we're doing in this space. From the simplest of things to power, for example, we've started a drive for solarization of towers. We've got 25,000 towers with solar panels powering it. We want to get to 75,000 over the next 2 years. So how do you reduce your dependence on fuel like diesel and then leverage renewable sources of energy? The second part is in our data center business. We are already using green energy. Our goal is to get to 70% green energy in our data centers, which is, again, goes back to how do you do business in a sustainable manner. And I think even the simplest of SIM cards that you use in your phones today, we have the green SIM, which focuses a lot on plastic recycling to generate that SIM, just that little thing there. So I think you've got to think both from a large scale standpoint, the impact, and also the smallest things that lead to a larger impact. And that's kind of the way we think about trust and sustainability. And it's something that's very, very important towards that goal of Viksit Bharat.
Interesting. Green SIM. I didn't know that exists. Wow. I would love to switch. If not, I have. Thank you so much. Umang, your thoughts on sustainability and the trust?
Let me talk about trust and sustainability. Coming from a vendor side, it's really tough to handle both things together. When you talk about trust, we talk about more processing to be developed on the nodes, and we talk about sustainability, less energy. At one stage, we have to build more processing and storage of data, and then we have to reduce the energy. So it's a dual impact to us. But I think both are really important. I link it to what Varun said earlier. You're talking about financial inclusions, and then you're talking about transactions to happen through the network. Viksit Bharat 2047, you're talking about financials, right? UPI has moved from India to a few more countries. It will be a world scale thing. So just imagine all of us going to different countries and using a UPI thing. You need trust. And we will not be using our laptops or going to a cafe to do it. We will be doing the UPIs or the transactions by the devices. And the devices are connected to millions of radios which are connected around the world. So as a company, what we work on is that how do you optimize the energy consumption on the radio? That's from a sustainable point of view. And it's not only about building software features, building intent-based automation, it's building AIs, building blockchains into the software, but also we need to optimize our chipsets, going to from 10 nanometer to 5 nanometer to 3 nanometers. A lot of scale has to change. We have to reduce the size of the radios, and it's a continuous innovation. And that's what we work on the sustainable. But if I look at world as a landscape, India as a landscape, we have approximately 5 to 7 million radios already deployed for 5G. Will it stop? No, it will not stop. The number of radios deployed around the world will come into few hundreds of millions of radios. And that's where the packaging material that we supply along with the radios, that has to be sustainable. We are talking about each and every CSPs that we talk around the world. They talk about target of 2030, 2035, 2040, 45, that they want to have a zero carbon footprint for the telco networks that they're building. We're looking at a world which will have approximately 50 to 60 GB of data consumption per sub. So sustainability is one piece where everybody is working onto it, but the key part is security. We talk about data security, database security, information about the clients. But if you look at the real cause, cyber security is one thing. Deep fakes is another thing that we are seeing. But the key part is where we need to work is all the malware and the vulnerability attack that we are seeing. I can just reveal some numbers. When we look at 4G networks, today we see approximately 180 to 200 vulnerability and malware attacks that we have to work on. We don't talk about it in the media and the press because, these are all silent things which we need to address. And it is happening in a very big scale on 5G networks. Just imagine the amount of scale of equipment that we are getting exposed to, the devices we are getting exposed to, and the type of complications we need to build in our software to make sure all these are attacked. And I think that's the inherent part of it, and that would only come with continuous investment of R&D that different companies are doing, including us, into this space of maintaining sustainability with reduced energy consumption, as well as maintaining a secure network, not only for subscribers, but for all the new applications and the platforms which are going to come for the financial side.
Indeed. Thank you so much. That's the inside story. With this, we are at the end of the session, and I couldn't expect more knowledge and the diverse kind of set of knowledge what I've got from this panel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on this, and please give a big round of applause to all my panelists.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the panelists, for a thoughtful and eye-offering contribution with such interesting perspective. I now request my moderator, Mr. Mohit sir, to distribute the respective mementos to all the panelists. Thank you. Once again, I would like to thank all of our panelists present here in the session today. I would request all of our panelists to gather for a group picture.